how did you pick your ideas to work on?
Good question. So for me, it was about generally things that I was already interested in. I would say things that I would get nerdy about, and I would just be having fun with them. That was where the web design development thing came from early on. And we're talking about back in the days where like the first books on HTML coding were coming out. So it was just this like deep nerd type stuff. Like I just wanted to get involved. I wanted to play with things. I wanted to break things. I wanted to fix things. And eventually, the capabilities and the skill sets were there where people would start to ask me to do things. And I was like, hey, can you do this for us? But that's how the agency was born by literally. When I say literally, I mean it in this sense. I know people use this word a lot now, but I literally ran into a friend, bumped into someone in the hallway at university who was a high school classmate that I hadn't seen for a couple of years, who said, hey, you're good at technology. Okay, sure. We need a website. Can you build us a website? We'll pay you. And I said, sure. I had no idea how to build a website. Literally ran out to Micro Center, which at the time was the mecca of all things tech from a product and literature standpoint in Columbus, Ohio. Ran over there and was like, okay, what books do they have that will teach me how to do this? And picked up a couple of those old, 1,000-page books and began coding over a weekend. And by that following Thursday, I had produced my first website and got paid a couple $100s and thought, well, that was fun. Let's do more of that. And then picked up the phone book. Dating myself hysterically here, right? Picked up the phone book, held it vertically, spine down, and just let it fall open. And it fell open to DJ services companies. Perfect market, right? So picked up the phone and started calling DJ services companies. On the sixth call, I got someone who had heard of the internet and was mildly interested in having me show up to do a sales call. So I put on an ill-fitting suit because, of course, you would, and went and showed up at this DJ services company, which was to say I sat in their dining room of their house somewhere on the outskirts of Columbus, and explained to them why the internet was going to be important, why they needed it, and how it helped them book more business. And got my second one, and then it just sort of continued from there. And but I think that that's sort of been my thing. There's been a little bit of opportunism, but the opportunism has always aligned with something else I was already interested in. I was never one of those who's going to like flip through the back of Forbes magazine, like what franchises are for sale, what can I copy, right? It was just like, what am I having fun with? What am I super interested in that I'm going to be doing, whether somebody's paying me to do it or not? And on occasion, people would come along and want to pay me for it. And that's been the genesis of a number of these businesses.
You had an itch, you scratched it. Just so happened that other people had that itch and they were willing to pay money for it. That's very common. How would you change your advice today? You're a seasoned founder now, serial founder. Ooh. Would you approach things differently today? Or what advice would you give for people and how it's changed today?
I don't know that I would change a whole lot about that. The reality is there's so many more things you can be interested in now. Technology is a much broader and vaster field. The barriers to entry are a lot lower. You don't have to schlep to a local retail center to pick up a book anymore. You can learn so many things, get interested in so many things, and find entire tribes of people who are interested in the same stuff. So I think that still comes back to this core notion of, sure, build things that look like they have opportunities, but base them on, we hear this a lot. Like it's like work from your passion, find something you're passionate about and then build against that. Was I passionate about building websites? I don't know. I think passion might be too strong of a word, but it was something that I really enjoyed doing. And it was something that I was super interested in, right? Was I passionate about it? I certainly wasn't out proselytizing. I wasn't writing ballads about it, but I was really like dug into it. And so I would still say, like, look at the things that excite you. Think about the things that you're going to get up and do, whether somebody's paying you to or not. Think about what it is that really motivates you at a deeper level, because as you and I both know as serial founders, this shit gets really hard at times. And if it's just for the opportunity of making money or just because you think it's a good idea, at some point the rubber hits the road. Like it gets really hard. We have to push through these things. If there's nothing beyond the opportunity motivating you, once you realize the opportunity isn't quite as good as it looked on that spreadsheet where you just multiplied things out to $100 million, all of a sudden you need something else to motivate you. And for me, it always came back to like, look, I actually want to do this. And I think for me, because it wasn't strictly about the money, and it wasn't just about the opportunity or some sort of end game, because as I told you in the first one, I had no end game. I just thought you start company, you run company. That's how this works. And then someday you close company maybe or whatever, but didn't occur to me to get paid to just hand it over. So because of that intrinsic motivation to do that, to build things and to be in that space at a really exciting time where we were kind of defining what web development and design looked like going forward, I was able to push through those moments because it didn't matter. I wasn't sitting there thinking, okay, 28 more billable hours and then we're done with this thing. I was thinking, how could we tweak that feature? How could we make this a little bit better? How could we get something else out of this for the client? But at the same time, absolutely for me, right? I was as excited to get those outcomes as they were, or maybe more so in some cases based on how little they paid me. But I don't know that I would change that much. I mean, I certainly, knowing how it's worked out, I wouldn't change the path for me. For somebody starting today, I guess the only subtle twist on that I would say is give yourself some time to explore. Right. I think for me, the exploration was significantly more difficult. We just didn't have access to everything that we have access to now. The internet was in its infancy. Search engines were in their infancy. Things just weren't as available to us as they are now. And just sort of look around and see what everybody else is doing and figure out how your unique spin or take or skill set impacts that market. And then just get in and play. Right. I always talk to people about like, they'll come and they're like, I've got this idea. I want to go raise funds. I'm like, okay, cool. But like, maybe we should date it a little bit first. For me, it's always like, do you really need to go get go sign on the line for a loan for your dream house? Or could we just pitch a tent on the land, occupy some space there and start to see what it feels like to actually be where you think you want to be? And that's why I was saying like, there's probably 20 plus things that I have started that I wouldn't call startups, because I pitched the tent, got on the land and was like, you know what? I don't like being here. I don't like the environment. I don't like the climate. I don't like whatever it was about it. Didn't like the work and decided not to do them. And I think that was really valuable. And I know Will and I have had long discussions on this one, but so much of what both of us have accomplished as entrepreneurs came from things we said no to as much as the things we said yes to. And so I think there was this really, really innate ability that I had that, again, like wasn't coached, wasn't trained. It just happened. I'm fortunate that I was maybe flighty enough that it was like, if I wasn't really having fun with something and I really didn't enjoy it, I let it go. And I know you and I both have plenty of stories where we watch somebody go way further down a path with something because of sunk cost fallacy, because I told all my friends I was going to do it, because whatever it was, just pure stubbornness, and refused to let things go that ultimately ended up being anchors instead of rocket ships for them.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a moment.
Sure.
Because I was reflecting upon the 2 and some odd years I've been here at Startups.com as the advisor, and I realized